or as a new genre has come up. And we looked at socio-political and economic, circumstances which paved the way for novel to emerge as a dominant and popular genre of literature. After that, we have also uh, looked at 18th century novel and different characteristics of 18th century novel in our previous classes. Just to recap, we have tried to understood that the earliest novels written by Samuel Richardson, uh, Daniel Defoe, right, and other writers of that time, and had a few uh, important characteristics, including, for example, portrayal of adventure, uh, being being realistic to an extent, based on stories of people, lives of people, are based on inspiration from real life incidents. And also a few novels were epistolary in nature, meaning that novels written in the form of letters. Okay. Then we took up two examples from 18th century novel. Those two novels were prescribed in your syllabus, in your BA syllabus. One was Daniel Defoe's novel, Robinson Crusoe, and the other novel was Henry Fielding's novel, Joseph Andrews. So these two novels also we covered in our previous classes. And today I'm going to talk about novels of another century, that is 19th century. So in this session, our focus would remain on 19th century novel. We'll try to understand how uh, 19th century novel was similar to the 18th century novel and how it was different to 18th century novel. What were the common characteristics and what were the unique characteristics of 19th century novel. And we'll also look at especially uh, the notable authors of 19th century uh, novel. And we'll also go on to talk about some of the important novels of this century. And as you and I hope you have the access to the syllabus, given by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, that this is the second block in your syllabus. And the way we had three different units in block one, where the first unit was the background, and the second and third unit were texts, that is novels, two different novels, one by Daniel Defoe and another by Henry Fielding. Similarly, in the block two, we have one background unit, that is 19th century novel, which we are going to talk about today, and then two texts from this 19th century as a study, one by Jane Austen and the other by Charles Dickens. So in the following classes, we will take up Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice and Charles Dickens' Hard Times. But in this class, let us delve into 19th century and try to understand what were unique characteristics of 19th century novel and how novel as an art or uh, as a genre of fiction has progressed or grew, okay, from its initial days in the 19th century to now in 19th century. Okay. So let's start with a very few important statements. Right. 19th century literature typically refers to written works published roughly between 1800 through 1899. Okay, so when we call 19th century, it means 1800, 1800 to 1899. So this period is called 19th century, and in literature, it is 19th century literature. The most popular novels of the Victorian age were realistic, thickly plotted, crowded with characters, and long, describing contemporary life and entertainment for the middle class. Now, if we refer to Merriam-Webster's dictionary to understand this literature, so popularity is the state of being liked, enjoyed, accepted, or done by a number of people. Okay, when we say popular, it means disliked, enjoyed, and accepted by a large number of people. Okay, so the popularity of the realistic Victorian novel would be entirely dependent on the people who read them. Now, for example, Charles Dickens' novel Great Expectations was originally released weekly in a journal publication, and people enjoyed it so much that it became in high demand quickly. And it eventually was turned into one novel. We know that in the 19th century, in the Victorian period, novelists used to publish their novels not as a one single book, rather as a series of chapters, okay, in the magazine, okay, or in a journal or a newspaper. So that is how novels used to be written in 19th century. The realistic Victorian novels became popular because it was the first time characters in a novel were similar and connected the people of the Middle East. Well, so one thing that we came to realize is that uh, especially unlike 18th century novel, um, this 19th century novel was different in the sense that the characters that were created resembled the ordinary middle class people, okay, of the society. If you go back and recall in Robinson Crusoe, for example, or Joseph Andrews, for that matter, uh, there also we have characters, but those characters not were not really a representative of the the society, okay, of especially the middle classes. And those novels, especially Robinson Crusoe, uh, actually showcases the imperialist uh, adventures of the time. Okay, but in this case, the characters were the commoners. Okay, the people whom you can easily find in your day-to-day life. So this is one of the defining features of 19th century novel. Now, what we will do is we will, as planned, we will go to look at some of the defining features or main features of the novel. Okay. We know that 19th century was a pivotal time or a significant time when it comes to novel as a genre, and otherwise also because one of the popular and one of the uh, significant uh, period in British history was Victorian period for variety of reasons. Okay, and one important reason is that in Victorian period literature flourished. Okay, and that is why you see a lot of production in terms of literature. Okay. So 19th century was a pivotal time for English literature, particularly for novel. So let us look at main features of 19th century English novel very specifically. One would wonder, there could be, multiple features, but in this our session, we will try to look at those, features thematically or organize in terms of, different themes. For example, one important feature of 19th century novel was realism. As I told you, when it comes to characterization, the 19th century novelists, whether it is Dickens or it is Jane Austen or any other writer of that period, they relied heavily on realistic depiction in their own fictional work. Okay, so realism is one of the very important and main feature of Victorian novels or 19th century novels. Many novels sought to depict life and society accurately, focusing on everyday experiences and common people rather than romanticized or idealized version of life. Okay. Now, if you look at Robinson Crusoe himself as a character in uh, Daniel Defoe's novel and compare it with one of the characters one finds in whether Charles Dickens novels or Jane Austen's novels. Uh, you will see a stark difference, a stark a difference. Okay, these characters of Dickens or Austen would be more realistic. Okay, would resemble a common man. Okay, man you can find in your day-to-day life. Okay, and unlike these characters, the characters of Defoe would be more idealized. Okay, more romanticized. Okay, and more fictionalized ones. So, realism remains one of the main features of 19th century novel. Not just the characters, but overall depiction of the society, the setting, all these things were more realistic in 19th century. For example, if you take Jane Austen's right uh, novel, you will see that England, its suburbs, right, are portrayed such that you can visualize the country. Okay, and the one who are familiar with landscape, English atmosphere, right, and English geography and culture would immediately connect with those things because the portrayal of the culture, the geography would be more realistic in the works of Austen and Dickens. Okay. Well, now moving on to the second important characteristics of 19th century novel, that is character development. Now, if we go back to Samuel Richardson's Pamela, right? So you realize that though there are characters in the novel, but those characters are not much developed. Okay, and they lack the psychological depth. Uh, but if you come to 19th century and if you pick up novels written by 19th century novelist, you will see that the characters are the main driving force of the entire story, and the characters are powerful, okay, and carry a lot of complexity and psychological depth in them, right? And Authors explore their motivations, inner conflicts, and moral dilemmas through the characters they have created in the novel. Okay. And third important characteristics one finds in 19th century novel is social commentary. Now, in a novel, a story is not merely a story for entertainment. In 19th century novel, the story is also a commentary on societal issues, societal situations. So many 19th century novelists use their novels to critique social issues such as class disparity, industrialization, gender roles, and moral values. This is evident in the works of authors like Charles Dickens and George Eliot. Right? And especially Charles Dickens, also George Eliot, they have heavily criticized rampant industrialization happening in and around England and the side effects of industrialization. Okay, uh, and they also have commented on other social issues apart from industrialization. For example, you see that Charles Dickens, some of his characters are orphans. So he critiques on the way orphans are handled in the society. Okay. Then the other important characteristics of 19th century novel is narrative techniques. Okay. Starting with the 19th century, there is plenty of exploration of different narrative techniques. In telling the story, in writing the novels. The use of various narrative styles, including unreliable narrators, multiple perspectives, became common in 19th century. And especially the stream of consciousness as a technique began to emerge toward the end of 19th century. Okay. One more characteristics of 19th century novel is serialized format. Okay. As I told you in the beginning that most of the novels of 19th century were written for different magazines as small in different parts or in different chapters. So towards the end of that series, uh, the whole the whole, the different parts are, combined and published as one book, one novel. Okay. Otherwise, all the writers, including Charles Dickens, who himself ran one, magazine, used to, publish his novels as, initially as, different, chapters in the magazine or newspaper. Okay. So novels were published in a serialized form in magazines, which influenced their structure and pacing. So now, if you are writing novel as in one book, you sit and write novel as a one book, you may do it in a different way. But if you have to cater to an audience who wait for your story in parts to come every week or alternate week, so then you take liberties with structure of the novel. So that's what was happening in case of Victorian novelists. Okay, so this format allowed authors to gauge audience reactions and adjust their stories accordingly. Now, every week when one part of the novel is published, then before you could publish the second one, you will get the feedback from audience about the character, about the setting, about the structure, about the overall story. So depending on that, the author, the novelist, would lengthen or shorten the story, would modify the character, would change the narrative technique, and do a lot of tweaks. before the other part is published. So it was more or less a life kind of writing. Okay, where before even you finish the whole, you will get feedback at every stage of the writing. Okay, let's move on to another uh, important feature of 19th century novel, that is themes of identity and morality. This question of identity and morality, right, have appeared in majority of the novels in 19th century. The exploration of personal identity, social status, and moral questions were prevalent. Authors often examine the struggles of individual against social norms. Okay. When we take up the examples of Charles Dickens' Hard Times, right? We will come to know, or Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, will come to know how identity and morality uh, uh, were important in those novels I have themes. Then yes, as I told you, when it comes to setting the environment also, which is another important feature of the novel of 19th century, you see that detailed descriptions of settings played a crucial role. So unlike the previous novels of 18th century, 19th century novels carry a plenty of description of the setting, which often reflected the social and economic conditions of the time. The more you write about the setting, the time, and the place, right, the more color and more hints you give to the reader about the circumstances, the times in which the story is taking place. Okay. Well, so that created a lot of interest among the readers. Okay, and those who were the first readers of these novels could immediately relate to the circumstances in which the story is happening, the kind of socio-political and economic circumstances that were driving their lives, happened to drive the lives of the characters in the novel. Okay, and especially because, as I told you, 19th century was predominantly a time of industrialization in England. So the rise of the industrial city was a common backdrop. But the city wherein there are a lot of huge chimneys and thick smoke coming out of those chimneys is a symbolic photo, a scene which one finds in the novels of George Eliot as well as in the novels of Charles Dickens. Okay, mills, chimneys. These are some of symbols that are easily seen in the novels of these writers, and it tells a lot about the background and the setting. Okay, and apart from that, we have romantic elements as an important feature of 19th century novel. While realism was dominant, some novels retain romantic elements from the previous, century practice, focusing on emotion and the sublime, often in contrast to industrial society. When we read, Pride and Prejudice, we come to realize that though the novel is realistic, though there is a setting which shows prevailing times, the industrialization and the effects of industrialization on the population, we'll also find romantic elements. Okay. And yet another feature in 19th century novel is the influence of romanticism. We know that romanticism was a movement, right? Uh, and it also influenced many 19th century writers, leading to a blend of romantic themes, a realistic story. The last important feature, right, uh, that I would like to mention here is the diverse genres. Okay, so The periods are the emergence of various subgenres within the novel as a dominant genre of 19th century. We know that Gothic novels, historical fiction, social novels have emerged in 19th century and have broadened the scope of what a novel will be. Okay, just give me a minute. Well, after going through these important features of 19th century novel, let's move on to talk about some notable representative authors of a 19th century. Uh, the most prominent among the 19th century novel that we are familiar with is Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens, with his representation of the society, the issues that he has taken up in his novels, has become a popular novelist of his time. And then we have George Eliot as an important novelist who wrote with a pseudonym or a pen name, George Eliot. And actually, George Eliot is not the actual name of the novelist. The actual name of the novelist is Mary Ann Evans. Okay, and we have Jane Austen, and we have Charlotte Bronte, we have Thomas Hardy. So these are some of the important novelists of 19th century. Okay. Now I just want to give you a brief overview uh, of these writers. Okay, because in the syllabus we have scope to read only two novelists and two different novels of these novels. So that is why I think it is important to have a general overview, and then we can take up the two described novels in the next classes. Well, as I told you, 19th century was a time of rapid social change brought on by the accelerated industrial revolution. The literary giants of the age captured this dynamic century from different angles. In poetry, novels, essays, short stories, journalism, and other genres, these writers provided a varied and exciting understanding of a world in flux. Okay. So let's start with Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was the most popular Victorian novelist and is still considered a titan of literature. Now, when we are saying titan of literature, which means he has significantly contributed to the British literature. Okay, and his aura, his influence has long crossed the British boundary and went as far as America, Australia, India, China, and many continents. Okay, he endured a notoriously difficult childhood, yet developed work habits which allowed him to write lengthy yet brilliant novels. There is a myth that his books are so long because he was paid by the word, but rather he was paid by installment, and his novels appear serially over weeks or months. Okay. Now we know that Charles Dickens wrote most of his novels in the form of chapters for magazines and newspapers. Okay, which means right he wrote in installments, week after week or every alternate week. Okay. So that is why it had taken many months for one novel to complete. Okay. In classic books, including Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, A Tale of Two Cities, and Great Expectations, Dickens documented the social conditions of Victorian Britain. He wrote during the Industrial Revolution in England, in London especially, and his books often concern the class divide, poverty, and ambition. Okay, so he is, as a writer, represented his age, his society, especially talking about the class divide that is happening as a result of industrialization and the rich and the poor, right, and the weak and the ambitious. Similarly, uh, in America, we had Walt Whitman. Okay, he was the greatest American poet, and his classical volume *Leaves of Grass* was considered both a radical departure from convention and a literary masterpiece. Like Charles Dickens in England, Walt Whitman also tried to represent his society, and especially of his time. And we had Washington Irving. Again, he was an American, and he made his name with the satirical masterpiece, The History of New York, and was acclaimed as a master of American short story, for which he created such memorable characters as Rip Van Winkle and Ichabod Crane. And we know that, when it comes to short story, you can never miss the name of Edgar Allan Poe. Poe did not live a long life, yet the work he did in a concentrated career established him as one of the most influential writers in history. Poe was a poet and literary critic, and also a short story writer who also pioneered the form of short story. His dark writing style was marked with a penchant for the macabre and mystery. He contributed to the development of such genres as horror tales and detective fiction. Within post-trouble life resided the clues how he could conceive of the disturbing stories and poetry for which he is widely remembered today. Now again, in America, we have Herman Melville. He was he was a novelist known for his masterpiece, Moby Dick, a book which was essentially misunderstood and ignored for decades. Based on Melville's own experience on a whaling ship as well as published accounts of real white whale, the story chronicles the quest for Typee, which was based on the time he had spent stranded in South Pacific. But Melville's true rise to literary notoriety arose in early 20th century, long after his death. And another American writer was Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson. He was an advocate. He was a kind of homegrown philosopher advocating a love of nature and becoming the center of the New England transcendentalists. Okay. Then we have David Thoreau. Okay. Mm. Yes, so we looked at some of the British and American writers, right, who were popular in 19th century as writers, and some of them were novelists, and some of them were some of them were poets and shorter story writers. One important name that I would like to mention is Arthur Conan Doyle. He was a British writer who produced a lot of stories. Okay, and he's known for Sherlock Holmes. So, as a creator of Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle felt trapped at times by his own success. He wrote other books and stories which he felt were superior to the extraordinarily popular detective stories featuring Holmes and his loyal sidekick, Watson. But the public always wanted more Sherlock Holmes. Okay. So his stories had plenty of suspense, investigation, and crime. So that's why he became very popular in his time as a writer. And even today, people would read Sherlock Holmes for pleasure and for his impeccable investigative skills. Well, we have looked at some of the important novelists as well. And I think it's time to look at few novelists and novels based on subgenres, right? Uh, we know that Jane Austen, George Eliot, Charles Dickens, right, and Bronte sisters were among Thomas Hardy, right, Walter Scott, William Makepeace Thackeray, Anthony Trollope are some of the major representative uh, authors and novelists of 19th century literature, 19th century English literature. Now, coming to different subgenres when it comes to Gothic novels, for example, Anne Radcliffe's The Mysteries of Udolpho, which appeared in 1794. Matthew Levy's The Monk appeared in 1796. Thomas Love Peacock's Nightmare Abbey, which appeared in 1818, and two versions of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The first one appeared in 1818 and the second one appeared in 1831. So when it comes to Gothic novels, these are some of writers, Anne Radcliffe, Matthew Levis, Thomas Love Peacock, and Mary Shelley. Similarly, there are certain novels, right, which are under Silver Fox School, particularly Lady Caroline Lamb's Glenarvon, Susan Ferrier's Marriage, Benjamin Disraeli's Vivian Grey, Edward Bowler Newton's Pelham, and Catherine Gore's Miss Armitage. Okay. These are the novels and novelists which can be or which are classified under the Silver Folk School. Okay. Similarly, we also had other subcategory within the novels, that is new women novels. In that, we have Oliver Schreiner's A Story of an African Farm, George Gissing's The Odd Women, and Grant Allen's The Women Who Did. Okay. Coming to popular fictions, we have R.M. Ballantyne's The Coral Island, Mary Braddon's Lady Audley's Secret, Charles Kingsley's The Water Babies, Anna Siegel's Black Beauty, Richard Jeffries' Bevis, and H. Rider Haggard's King Solomon's Mines. Okay. Apart from these, subgenres and categories, we also had Tyndale's civil fictions, ranging from Arthur Conan Doyle's The Sign of Four and Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray to Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, and Bram Stoker's Dracula. These are some of the novels which revolve around crime, investigation, right, and supernatural. Okay, so these were some of the things that I thought was necessary to discuss with you, and if you think more can be talked about, you can text me, you can write in the chat box, write in the comment. In the next class, When we take up Charles Dickens, hard times, we can discuss, anything that will be covered in today's counseling session. Uh, we'll take up in the next one. And before we uh, wrap up and conclude today's class, what I would like to do is to recall what so far. So, dear students, we took up 19th century novel as a topic for today's discussion, and this is in continuation to what we discussed in the previous classes about 18th century novel and two different novels, Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe and Joseph Andrews by Henry Field. From there, we moved on to this topic, 19th century novel. Okay. And in this class, we have tried to understand various important characteristics of 19th century novel, and including the realism, that is shown, that is visible in 19th century novel, the character development, the social commentary of the existing society, and different narrative techniques employed by the 19th century novelists, and the very style of publishing, right, where novels were not published at once as a book, rather novels were serialized and published in installments, including by Charles Dickens and other writers. And recurring of the theme of identity and morality in majority of the 19th century novels, and elaborate and detailed descriptions of the settings and environment in the novels of 19th century, and existence and influence of romanticism, uh, romanticism in their novels. And also, we have looked at uh, the development of subgenres of novel, including gothic novels, historical novels, social novels, and detective fiction. Okay. And apart from that, we have surveyed or quick, in a very brief manner, or different notable authors uh, of both the British literature and uh, American literature. In British literature, we had Charles Dickens as a representative novelist of 19th century England. Then we had George Eliot, Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte or Bronte sisters altogether, Thomas Hardy. And apart from that, we have actually also we try to understand different authors representing different subgenres. Before that, we looked at Austen, Scott, Mary Shelley, Dickens, Eliot, Hardy, and Brontes, who are popular writers of 19th century English literature. Yes, so some representative uh, authors were Jane Austen, George Eliot, Bronte sisters, Charles Dickens, Thomas Hardy, Walter Scott, William X. Thackeray, and Anthony Trollope, among many others. Yes, so coming to subgenre Gothic novels or Gothic fiction, we had names such as Anne Radcliffe, right, who gave us the Mysteries of Udolpho, Matthew Levis, who gave us The Monk, Thomas Love Peacock, who gave us Nightmare Abbey, and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Okay. Similarly, there is one classification called Silver Folk School. Writers representing this particular school are Lady Caroline Lambs, right? Susan Ferrier, Benjamin Disraeli, Edward Bulwer Lytton, and Catherine Gore. Similarly, another such classification is new women novels, and among those who represented this group is called are Olive Schreiner, uh, George Gising, and Grant Allen. Okay. And coming to popular fiction, we had R.M. Ballantyne, Mary Braddon, Charles Kingsley, Anne Sewell, Richard Jefferies, and H. Rider Haggard. And last, subgenre which we looked at, we can call it as, Pinday or crime fiction, like a detective fiction, right? Where Arthur Conan Doyle, Oscar Wilde, R.L. Stevenson, H.G. Wells, and Bram Stoker. So with these, we are concluding our discussion today on the topic 19th century novel. I'm looking forward to see you in the next class when we take up Charles Dickens' Hard Times. So take care. Bye bye.